Welcome back. This is part 2 of the presentation. Each study has some strengths and some weaknesses. Some weaknesses in this study included a need for more extensive family participation. A 3-month summer vacation for the program was not used, and limited staff training. The CATCH programs also involved about 20 extra hours per year of class time. This program did not use resources that could have helped encourage sustainability of the lifestyle taught in the program. In addition to schools, the program could have targeted community members, locations such as grocery stores, and parks and recreation centers, as well as initiating a mass media campaign to correspond with the lessons. This could have lessened the weakness of 3-month summer vacations, because these could have been done during the summer with the children. Even with the weaknesses, there were many strengths to this study. To illustrate this point, I analyzed the program using the summary sheets that we have been given. For the theory and conceptual and underpinning the hypothesis, I gave this study a 5. I felt that this hypothesis tightly corresponded with the activities that the study completed, and the measured outcomes of this study also corresponded with the hypothesis. This study was very strong at trying to test what it said it was going to test. For the intervention and fidelity, I gave this program a 4. I felt like all interventions were followed with over 80% accuracy, giving it high fidelity. However, not all interventions were followed 100%, so I did not give this study a 5. The process evaluation, I gave it a score of a 5. The numbers and the statistics were stated for most processes, and descriptions of evaluations were thorough. For instance, when it talked about the results for the food service, it specifically stated that fat intake from the school lunches was reduced from 38.7% to 31.9% in the intervention schools, whereas in control schools it decreased from 38.9% to 36.2%. This indicated more than a 4% change, and the p-value they listed was less than 0.001. This type of detail and statistics, as well as statistical significance, were throughout the study. For the design and method of assignment, I gave this study a 4. As mentioned previously, the control group and intervention groups were well matched. There was no significant difference in the ages, the sex, the ethnicity, or the risk factors or environment in control schools versus the intervention schools. These two groups were very well matched. However, I gave it a 4 because the control groups may have been biased, considering they were willing to participate in a study. This is something that is hard to overcome in an intervention study. However, I still felt like it didn't quite deserve the 5. For the sample size, I gave this study a 4. There were thousands of students who were followed throughout this study, and 96 elementary schools. However, half of the elementary schools were in the South, with no elementary schools in the central United States. Also, powers were not mentioned in this study. For attrition, I gave this study a 4 because only 21% of the primary cohort was lost. The outcome measures of substantive relevance I gave a 5 because outcomes were highly applicable to target populations and goals. While it did not include the central United States, the rest of the study did use people from all across the United States, with some in the South, some in the Northeast, and some in the West. Also, they were equally split between the locations studied, giving a more equal look at the populations. I felt like this study was very relevant to target populations and could be implemented in other similar populations throughout the United States. Also, the outcomes did have to do with the goals. While there were no markers for cardiovascular disease that were significantly changed, it did help teach behaviors and knowledge that could help promote a healthier lifestyle. The outcome measures of psychometric properties, I gave a 4. I felt like the outcomes were valid and reliable. However, I did not feel like they were perfect. As stated previously, there were no markers of cardiovascular disease that we saw a decrease in from this study, even though it likely did have a positive impact. For other plausible threats to validity, I did give this score a 3, which was my lowest score. I feel like the study did not account for other factors. For instance, it mentions that the control may have seen changes related to interest and participation in a health study, which may indicate an interest in changing health. Some schools who would not have been willing to participate may have been better control groups because they may not have already had this likelihood of wanting to be healthier and wanting to follow guidelines. Also, during the same time, different guidelines in school lunches often change. This was not accounted for in this study and may have affected the results. The integrity of this study, I gave a 4. Most of the outcomes were strong, with good confidence in the results. However, some were very minimal, even if statistically significant. Even though they were statistically significant, they may not have been very applicable because of how minimal they were. The utility of this study, I gave a 4. The findings indicate that while modest, positive changes were made. However, some of the results did not indicate a statistically significant change, such as the cholesterol levels or the 9-minute run test. Also, not all avenues were used to create sustainability of this program, such as the use of mass media, community members, or parks and recreation centers. Also, the use of parents was very limited and may have improved the results of this study. Overall, however, the majority of the scores were a 4 or a 5, making this a very strong study. To prove the strength of this study, I also researched a little bit about what has happened since this study was completed. Since this study, there is now a program that can be started by elementary schools who elect to start the program. It also goes by the name of CATCH. However, CATCH has now been changed to stand for Coordinated Approach to Child Health, focusing on the different avenues that must interact in order to achieve the objectives. Schools can now choose to adopt this program, and all they have to do is simply order the materials. While this study only looked at grades 3 through 5, there are now options that begin in preschool and can go through the 8th grade and are specific for each grade level. There are also after-school curriculum options that may help enhance the teaching without taking away from classroom time. Also, following the study findings, the Texas Senate felt that the findings were so strong that they wanted to make part of the goals of this study become law. Texas passed a Senate bill requiring all schools to put a school health program in place, either CATCH or one like CATCH, to help improve the risk of cardiovascular disease in that state's children. In 2012, over 1/3 of the elementary schools in Texas had implemented the CATCH program specifically. As with many other educational teaching materials, Texas is a cornerstone for the United States to look at for what should be taught in schools because of the large number of children. To have over 1/3 of the elementary schools in Texas implement this program indicates their belief in its success and the belief that this could positively impact the community and the nation. The CATCH study set the framework for further interventions to help promote healthy behaviors that could potentially decrease the rate of cardiovascular disease in America. This study helped to show that school interventions, especially when coupled with family interventions, can be beneficial in promoting behavior change. Coupling food service, physical education, school curriculum, and family participation can help programs aimed at children to be successful by incorporating many avenues and many areas of reinforcement. By teaching children at this young age, you often will establish better habits, and by including the parents, those habits are more likely to be a permanent change. The saying is, out of the mouth of babes. Often when parents listen to their children talk about what they learned or are interactive with what they are learning, the parents can also change their beliefs, which will impact their children's behavior and their children's lifestyle. By starting this program at schools and including parents, further studies could help this be a successful way to change how the nation's health system looks in the years to come. While I base most of this presentation on the study, which is listed as reference 3 here, I did do some additional research that helped to give me a broader scope of the topic. I found that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention had multiple websites that were very helpful when analyzing this study. 2 of them discuss specifically the leading causes of death and how cardiovascular disease is still the #1 cause of death in America. The Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report discusses how long this has been a problem and some of the reasons why it continues to be a problem today. The final reference on this sheet discusses the CATCH program that is now implemented in Texas schools. It gave a brief summary of this research topic that we looked at, as well as explaining the Senate bill and how the Senate bill got proposed and why it passed the Senate. I felt like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention have so many topics related to this, it was a very relevant study. And for the number of times that it has been mentioned throughout the Center for Disease Control and Prevention website, they felt like this was a strong and reliable study as well. From this study, I think we can all learn that program interventions may not always have immediate results, but if sustained over multiple years, they can change how we see the world. I hope that this presentation helped you to think about what you got from the study differently, and I am excited to see your presentations as well as hear what you thought about this study. Thank you.